Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Faith, Family, and Political Affairs. It's been a while since I've been before you, and so much has gone on that I wanted to weigh in on a couple of things, namely the deportation mess that is currently sweeping the country. I have to just say up front that for me, I just think it's heartbreaking, the way things are playing out. Who would ever think that in the United States of America that we would have people just showing up in masks and just kidnapping people basically off the streets of America, handcuffing them, arresting them, and then sometimes shipping them out of the country without ever bringing them into a courtroom to state their case in front of a judge. Uh, I don't think that any of us, even those of us who did not want this administration uh, to prevail in the November elections, I don't think that even we thought that they would be this brazen and behave in such an inhumane way. Um, Certainly, we expect people to be law abiding. If you followed me any length of time, certainly if you followed my career in journalism for 20 some years and post journalism when I was running the little community newspaper in Windsor, North Carolina. If you followed me at any length, you know that I try very hard to be fair-minded. I count myself as a person who promotes and believes in diversity, um, and a sensibility. I believe in the rule of law in the land of. I do. Um, But I think that our laws are to be enforced with a level of humanity and the morality that is expected of a nation that calls itself Christian. Okay, so let's start there. Um, the deportations, um, number one, the title of this segment of Faith, Family, and Political Affairs is What About the Children? So let's just start there. Thanks to Project 2025, which I talked a lot about during the elections, which not just me, but so many others, much more prominent than I am in the media, talked about Project 2025. The vice president who was running for the presidency at the time, Kamala Harris, and her running mate, Tim Walz, they talked about Project 2025. And the man who they were running against, who would become the 47th president, Donald Trump, denied any knowledge of Project 2025. And of course, everyone knows now that from the time he was sworn into office and the time he sat behind what was once called the Resolute Desk, he has done nothing but enforce Project 2025. A key tenet of Project 2025 had to deal with deportations. I pointed it out during the elections because I was shocked by it. But Project 2025 promised that it would strip away the rights of the children of immigrants to have legal representation if they were ever brought before a court, to have either their parents deported or if for some reason they would be deported. Um, in this president's first time in the Oval Office, he was scorned because he separated families into the deportations that he led under that in that administration. He kept children in cages. Their pictures, go Google it. As I always tell you, if there's anything that I report on or speak on, if that you do not believe or you have not heard of, and you want to verify, please Google it, and you will find. Just Google deportations during the first Trump administration. And the children were kept in cages. They were often separated from their parents if their parents were deemed to be illegal. And there was a process for determining what to do with the children. But until it was decided, they were kept in cages pretty much. Okay, so the Trump administration, the first one, caught a lot of heat for that. So they came back this time, Project 2025 just had a whole different way of dealing with it. Their answer was not to get legal representation for the children and to keep the children in safe spaces. Their answer to that was, hey, we'll give the parents a choice. Either you're going to be deported. That's number one. If we snatch you up and we determine that you're legal or illegal, just the administration, you don't have to go before a court anymore. They've pretty much gotten rid of due process. And all due process is two words that mean a lot in the American legal judicial system. Due process means nobody can accuse you of anything and then punish you. We're innocent until proven guilty in the United States of America. Um, a lot of that has to go all the way back to England when the so-called founding fathers, who did not look like me, but they fled England because they felt the laws were unjust. They did not always get to go before a court and state their case. Okay. So but they were taxed and they paid taxes and everything. And they felt, hey, we don't have any representation in these laws, so we're not going to pay the taxes anymore. There's a whole reason for the Boston Tea Party and all that stuff you get taught in school, that made the founding fathers appear to be righteous, So all of that was about due process. Okay. They fought a whole war. They left England because they were like, hey, if we're going to be paying taxes and we're going to be living here, we want to, number one, if you accuse us of something, we want a chance to prove our innocence. So when they made the laws over here, they were like, no, you're innocent until someone proves you guilty. That has been a tenet of our legal system my entire life. And before me, I'm just saying that that's what I've known all my life. But now, this new, and only this administration, and only the Lord knows why they're being allowed to get around all the laws the way everybody else has had to abide by the laws up until then. That's a puzzle. Why is this administration? That's for somebody else to answer. Like they say, put a pin right there and come back to that later. Why is this administration so different? Why is it being allowed to just ignore the laws that have been in place, for hundreds of years? Okay. And the laws upon which the nation was founded. Okay. So just keep that question in the back of your mind. Um, so, so this whole deportation piece, all of us agree, I think, that if you're here and you're illegal, that you need to face those consequences. I definitely don't think that you need to just be picked up off the street and never get to go into court and say, what's up? Like, why are you here? And why are you illegal? And why have you not made yourself legal? I think that you should have the right to a minute to go and state your case. Um, so this way that this the way that they're handling things is just inhumane. But let's go back to the children. Okay, so if right now in this moment we've had children who were sick, one child had cancer, was getting special treatments in this country. That child's parents were deemed to be illegal, so that child was deported with the parents. So they have come up with a really, I guess they think it's cute, a cute solution to not splitting up the families. They say, hey, we'll give you the option. You're going to be deported. So what you have to decide is, do you want your children to go with you or not? Okay? But it used to be by law that if the child is born in the United States of America, then that child is an American citizen with certain rights, all the rights that come with that. And they could not be just deported because they're American citizens. And because of their citizenship, their parents were not so easily deportable. Okay? But this administration has flipped that. And the most recent so just think about that for a moment. If you're a parent and you know you have done something, say you are here illegally, but your child was born here, and that you're faced with this, and they come to you and they say, hey, you're going to be deported. What happens to your children? That's up to you. Do you want to take them with you? Or do you want to leave them here and let them go into the legal foster care system or to any relatives that you might have? But you're going to be deported. Consider for a moment, if you're in that predicament, what would be your answer? Particularly if you have a child who's sick. Okay? Just think about that for a moment. As Christian nation, we're called, as a Christian nation, the tenets of Christianity, what Christ taught. Okay? You are called to be humane. You are called to consider in a compassionate way the feelings of your neighbors. Neighbors is a broad term in the scriptures. You know it. I mean, it doesn't mean the people who live next to you. It means fellow Christians. It means fellow people who are around you in your community. You are obligated to have some sense of compassion, care, and concern for them. Okay, so let's just keep that also in the back of your mind. So, but right now, as bad as that is, we've had several children to be deported with their parents to these, they say these deplorable places, prisons that are, places that are life-threatening and sometimes people are sent to countries that they're not their birth countries, countries they've not even ever been to. Imagine that. Imagine one day you're in your home or you're going to your job, and the next day you've been snatched up and sent to somewhere that you have no knowledge of. Just think about a moment like when you're on a trip, you go to visit another state, relatives in another state, and you get lost and you end up in a part of that state that you're not familiar with. Think of how nervous you get, how worried you get. You call your family, you say, I'm lost. Can you help me get to the place that I'm supposed to be getting? You call somebody because you get a little concerned when you don't know where you are. But imagine these people being shipped to a whole nother country that they've never been to. Okay, this is inhumane treatment. This is un-American. This is certainly unchristian. Okay, so the most recent attack is on the children. okay, with the birthright citizenship. Uh, Trump's attempt to just ignore that or completely overturn that. Birthright citizenship, I would advise you take a minute if you don't want to read about it. Again, Google it. Uh, talk to Siri about it, whatever your way is of finding information quickly. Birthright citizenship is two words that mean a lot. Okay. It stems from. I'll give you a quick version of it because it's complicated. But it stems from the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. It was put in place sometime after the Civil War ended, and the powers that be had to figure out what to do with the children of slaves. Not just the children of slaves, but slaves. Okay, because there were also free men. There were African Americans, and there were even some Europeans who had come over here as indentured servants. That means they owed somebody some money or something, or they were paid to come here and work. Okay, so there were levels of that, and not all Black people were slaves. Some were free people who had come here to work. Um, but birthright citizenship was the 14th Amendment, stems from the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. Go and read it. Basically, it says anybody born on American soil is an American citizen with all the rights and privileges of a citizen. Okay? And it basically was because before the Civil War was fought, African Americans in print, you can thank us later, anybody who benefits from it. You can just thank us later. But African Americans, because we did not ask to be brought to America, okay, um, had been written down as three-fifths of a person. We were not considered a full person, which I think made it easier for you to enslave people. Because if you thought they were 100% human, then you got to answer your whole Christian faith. You got to go back and rethink that. Okay, so we're not here to litigate that. But unless you say this person is less than a human being, you have to in your Christian faith, you have to reconcile that, okay? If you're going to enslave me, whip me and stuff when I try to leave, if you're going to rape the women at will, make them have children that look like both of us put together, um, if you're going to do all of that, deny the slave the right to marry, all of that, if you're going to do all of that and you know that these are real human beings, then you have to reconcile that with your Christian faith, which is impossible to do, which is why we were written down as three-fifths of people, okay, of a person. So after the Civil War, you have this dilemma. Okay, what to do with these people who are now free, okay, and they're free people now, and they're on American soil. Are they citizens now? So you have to figure that out. So they came up with the 14th Amendment to the Constitution to say that these people are born here. They're not Africans anymore. We flipped that and beat that out of them. They have no memory. They're three and four generations now removed or more removed from their African heritage. So they're not Africans anymore. So we're going to they need to be granted citizenship. That's the 14th Amendment. So anyone who comes after that, okay, benefits and enjoys what came from slavery. Anybody who comes to the country that before the Trump administration, if you came here as an immigrant and you had a child born here on this soil, that child is a citizen. Okay? Before the Trump administration. All other presidents never touched. No one ever thought to touch the 14th Amendment. It's codified, it's written in stone, we thought. Okay, so what to do with the children of immigrants? I mean, it is inhumane to not give them legal representation. That's number one. If you look at the picture that I've been running on my page for this, what about the children? That little boy was being taken into court after his parents had been deported, and he had to sit there and answer questions of a judge. His primary language was Spanish. Okay. And the judge was speaking in English. The child barely knew what the man was asking him. Imagine when you go to court for a traffic ticket or whatever, you hardly even understand what the judge, because it's legalese, it's legal language a lot of times. You need a lawyer to help you understand. Imagine a child sitting in that big old chair before a judge and trying to comprehend what's going on. Parents not with them and that kind of thing. Again, we're going to have to answer for this. We're going to have to answer for this. The universe, God, will not allow this to go unanswered. I don't think. The word says, as much as you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. We have to be thinking about that because we continue to say we're a Christian nation. In fact, a lot of the language that the MAGA people use, they call it Christian nationalism. They think that they are following the scriptures in their fettered support of Israel, no matter what Israel does. They think they're following the scriptures. They think. But on the one hand, you're going to follow the law of the scriptures when Israel wants to bomb Gaza or whatever Israel wants to do. And let me just say, after Israel was attacked on October 7th a few years ago, and the people were killed at the music festival, I absolutely, they had a right to retaliate. But look at how long this has gone on. And so you look at the death and destruction, and look at the disregard for the children, even in Gaza. Again, you cannot continue to say you're a Christian nation if you behave in an unchristian manner. Okay. And so now, 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship. So the newest and latest attack on the children of immigrants is that, hey, right now, there's an injunction. There was an injunction blocking Trump from just deporting the children, and that's been blocked. Now there's a judge that says he can do pretty much what he wants to do with the parents and with the children, and that children who are born to immigrants, in the next 30 days, whether or not their citizenship is given to them, granted to them, is even in question. Okay? So it's even in question right now whether the children who are born, who are yet unborn, they're not here yet, those who are born in the next 30 days until this judge makes this ruling, their citizenship is going to be in question. Because think about it for a minute. Is the goal to make sure that these children are not citizens, and if they're born here and they're not citizens, you have created an underclass. And what does that mean? You can do things to them that you can't do to other American citizens. Pay attention. I always say, pay attention. What you allow to be done to one group of people, you stand by, you let it happen. You know it's not legal. And further than that, you know it's inhumane. You know it's not Christian. You're going and sitting in church every Sunday, you're sitting in Bible study, you watching this go down. Okay. What is our obligation? I don't have the answer to that. And I don't judge anyone for not getting, physically involved, like the protest marches. That's another piece of what I'm going to address today. Um, but to me, the treatment of the children, I won't say it's unforgivable because God forgives us so many times for so many things that we do, individually and as a country. America is still blessed in spite of slavery, right? In spite of Jim Crow, in spite of, look at the pictures of the Hispanic men, the way that they are grabbing them and showing us them in their underclothes and chaining them, putting chains around their feet and shackles and stuff around their hands and shackling them together. The way they used to do slaves, to just be honest. Go back and look at some of the pictures. And as an African American, that's a part of my history. When I see these pictures, I it makes me feel so bad. I don't know these people, but shackles? A lot of people point out that when Jeffrey Dahmer, Google the name, you younger people who, were not born like 20 years ago, who murdered and mutilated, and they say consumed the flesh of the people who he killed. They allowed him to walk into the courtroom without shackles on his feet and without chains on his hands. A serial killer. Okay. But you will take these people whose biggest crime, if they've been convicted of it, was trying to get to this country for a better life. And if they broke the law, hey, they broke the law, give them the punishment. And if it's deportation, deport them. But do you have to treat them in such a humane way? Do you have to shackle them and then take pictures of them bent over, chained like chattel? Why do you need to do that? And then Christy Nome, I think she's national security chief, she likes to get in front of them and take pictures the way they used to do once they lynched black folks for trying to escape slavery. They would lynch them and then they would take pictures with them, get in front of them with their children and take pictures with the bodies still hanging from a tree. Sometimes bodies that they burned. Okay, so this to me is similar. Okay, this is similarly egregious, painful, hurtful, dehumanizing. And it has to be answered for. Donald Trump may be long gone, long dead, before the country has to pay for this. But the laws of the universe are what they are. The laws of God are what they are. They don't change because you get a crazy person in the White House. They don't change. And somebody will have to answer for this, especially the treatment of these children. So we'll move on from that. Um, but be paying attention to what happens with birthright citizenship. Two of the Supreme Court justices just had sort of a clash. One of them, of course, Ketanji Brown Jackson. I think she is the newest member to the court, but of course, African American. But she dissented from this latest ruling in favor of the Trump administration to pretty much do what they want to do with these children and to put their birthright um, citizenship into question. She dissented from this Supreme Court decision, and dissent just means she did not agree with it, but she wrote in a very strong and passionate paper why she disagreed. And pretty much, I'm going to paraphrase it, but you can also find that online. I saw it online and I read some of it. I didn't read all of it. But pretty much her position is basically they're giving him the right to break the law. The law of the land still says the 14th Amendment has not been repealed. It is still in place. So they're giving him permission to break the law. And she's saying basically, if you're going to give him permission to break the law, then what does that mean for everyone else? What does that mean for the legal system? You're basically making a sham of the legal system. This is what she says. And she says basically it's the beginning of real, you know, legal, political, societal doom for our country. And then the other justice, Amy Coney Barrett, who is Caucasian, and I mentioned that because this is how it's being played out in the media. She she wrote the original opinion from the court, um, you know, saying that it was okay for Trump to do what he's doing. The opinion that Justice Brown Jackson dissented from. And so she had a retort to what Justice Brown Jackson wrote. Pretty much, I'm not going to even talk about it too much because it was a more like a personal attack than it was an attack on her dissent. And basically, let's just say real briefly and move on. But the Supreme Court throughout my life was a court that you knew was unbiased. Okay. Those people had earned the right to a job that they had for their lifetime, but they didn't just get it because they belonged to a particular political party. They got it because they went by the rule of law. They believed in the Constitution, and anything and everything that opposed the Constitution, they were against. Their job was to protect the Constitution. And so this court, which is pretty much, majority of people appointed by Trump, is pretty much changing the flavor or the way the Supreme Court has behaved as long as it's been the Supreme Court. And a lot of people are saying this time period right now is going to be studied, in the history books and taught in classes and everything. So if you're a young person right now, and or if you're an older person, just be paying attention to the changes in the Constitution. That the changes in the laws are not being changed technically, but they're being changed in terms of how they're being executed by this administration. Okay, and pay attention to who steps up to say, this will not do. Okay, I do, me and a lot of people that I know do what we can from our places, but you have legislators right now in the United States Congress who seem to not know quite what to do with this administration. So, but be paying attention, and the next time you have an opportunity to vote, keep all of this stuff in mind. And that takes me to the next segment. I'm going to move on. That takes me to the next thing that I would like to talk about. And that is this, I'm going to call it the blackout, okay? Because a lot of African Americans have decided they're not going to participate in these protest marches against the deportations and against just basically the Trump administration, the way that they're behaving. This attack on Medicaid and Medicare with this big, beautiful bill thing that they have going right now. So a lot of people have decided, a lot of African Americans, there have been protests all around in California, protests all around the nation. But African Americans, for the most part, have decided to sit this one out. And there have been a lot of comments online, some in the Hispanic community, but some in other communities are saying, well, this is not the time to be sitting out. I mean, you should be standing up and protesting. Even some of the African Americans, old school from civil rights movement are saying, um, that we should be more visible. But a lot of the young people are saying, why? We were very visible leading up to the elections. We urged people to get out and vote against Trump's policies because we knew what he was going to do because of Project 2025. So many of the young people are like, we're not putting our bodies out there. Number one, because we don't know what Trump will do. Will he call out the National Guard as he did in California? And will he actually engage, shoot people? Because you remember he brought the helicopters out for Black Lives Matter during his first administration. And it is reported that he wanted to shoot into the crowds of the Black Lives Matter protests when George Floyd was killed by the police officer. That Donald Trump wanted to shoot into the crowd. He wanted to have the military people shoot into the crowd to disperse the people. But the legal people on his team told him that was not constitutional. He could not get away with that. And that was the only thing that kept him from doing it. But now he has a Supreme Court that allows him to do pretty much what he wants to do. So it doesn't make sense for Black people to get out there like that en masse. That means in large numbers. Because he might just actually shoot people. And I think it does give him a moment of pause when it's not mostly Black. If we're just keeping it real, because he's been very blatant about turning back diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. He's been very clear about erasing Black history. He doesn't want it taught in schools. He's actually told different colleges and stuff he's going to cut their funding if they continue diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. He's removed some of the names of Black veterans from the websites of the military websites, like Medgar Evers and like Jackie Robinson. Even he's banned Black books. He's been very clear in his attack on African American culture. Okay. So I think the children, the young people are well within their rights to say, not this time. Okay. This time maybe as you're out there marching and protesting deportations and protesting some of these other laws that you think are not right, that Trump is doing, these other actions that he's taking, maybe call upon the Asians to help you out. Maybe call upon some of the other communities to support you. One young lady online made a very strong argument, I thought. She said, your strongest ally right now to the Latino community is not, don't be so angry that Black people are not coming out. She said, the power lies with the Caucasian community right now because that's who Trump is paying attention to. So maybe you need to be pushing to get more of them to help you right now. Because it might be more of a hindrance if we're there because they might shoot into the crowds. So I think this is worth at least considering. And I'll say this about the I call it the blackout, but I say this about it, and then I'll move on from that even. I think it's a personal decision whether or not you want to protest, whether or not you want to march. But I've always felt that way. My career was as a journalist. There were many times when I felt that protests were going on that I wanted to participate in. But as a journalist, we were supposed to remain neutral. So I never marched, in protest of anything. I made my position known in other ways. I wrote about stuff because that was my job. And but I always have an affinity for the people who will get out and actually participate in protest marches. But I think it's a personal decision. And so I don't knock the people who do go, and I don't knock the people who decide, hey, not this time. I think it's a personal decision. And I support either position. Um, as long as it's thoughtful and you are paying attention to what's going on around you, and you know what the issues are. Um, so that's why I'll leave that there. The last thing that I want to just mention, um, and I just happened to see this yesterday. Again, this is just a little bit of a tag on the inhumanity of um of the deportations. I want you to Google this. Alligator Alcatraz. This is in Florida. This comes from Ron DeSantis. You remember Ron DeSantis, the guy who was anti-woke. Florida is where woke comes to die, that guy. So in Florida, um, they are they're calling it a detention center for illegals, as he calls them. He talks about the people like they're not people, like they're animals, and you just call them illegals. They're people. They're people who came to the country, and there's a question about whether or not they're here legally or not. Take them to court and let's figure that out. But he calls them illegals. But in Florida, they're building a detention center to house immigrants until they get due process or until they can be deported. But guess what? They're building it near or on property that is infested with alligators and other wild animals. I guess this is meant to deter the people from trying to escape. But again, the inhumanity of it. Like, why would you publicize that piece of the detention center? It's like to them, it's a joke. So Ron DeSantis is parading around. He's showing the area off where the detention center is going to be built. He's talking about the alligators and stuff that are around and the wild animals. And he's just taking the people in his sunglasses, taking people on tours of the land where the detention center is going to be. Detention means you have not yet been adjudicated. You're being detained until you can be adjudicated. But already they're building this place and they're calling it, Alcatraz is one of the most notorious prisons. I think it's even shut down. But they're calling it the alligator Alcatraz because the people who try to escape, I guess the alligators are going to eat. Again, the inhumanity of all of this. To somebody somewhere, it's funny because, they're even floating around the MAGA people. They're even floating around a TV show that's kind of like, getting voted off an island. where the people who are considered illegal immigrants, they have to go and fight against one another to be able to stay here. Like it's a game. There's a group of people who think that they're human and everybody else is on that other level. Like the three-fifths of a human. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Okay. So there's some people who still think that. They have that supremacist thought process that others, anybody other than them, are just a little bit less than them. So it's okay to treat them, shackle them, put them in prisons where animals might be able to get to them and eat them if they try to escape. It's okay to treat their children like, little rabbits, put them in a cage or something if you don't know what to do with them. It makes me very sad. It makes me very sad. When I see the pictures again of the people shackled, it does something to me. So I think that we need to all be considering that. Okay, now the last thing, I said that was the last thing. There was one other thing that I wanted to just end with, and I think this is on the positive note. I, I hope it is. Juneteenth. So Juneteenth this year was a major, I call major success. A lot of people around the country celebrated Juneteenth. If you don't know what it is, when the slaves were set free after Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, that's when Lincoln signed it, right? The Civil War had ended and he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. But of course, we didn't have telephones then and we didn't have TVs. So a lot of the people who were down in the Deep South did not find out that they were even free until maybe a couple of years later. And so Juneteenth is a major, major celebration in the nation. Um, for African Americans lead it, but other people who support um, the whole cause of freedom also join in on those celebrations. And so I just wanted to just mention some of those and to advise you to check some of those out. There's a lot of line dancing, that boots on the ground song that's very popular right now. A lot of those performances, people made videos and put those out there for Juneteenth. And it was June 19th is the day that it's celebrated. But and the celebrations were, you get a day off from work, but the celebrations were very diverse this year. And that gave me a little bit of hope. I think that there's still people who don't buy into this whole idea of MAGA, that we're all divided by color, creed, and ethnicity. There's still people who just kind of want to get along with one another, and a lot of the Juneteenth celebrations, um, showed that. So, okay, that's it for me for this time. Want to thank you for tuning in. I had planned a very different event for this, but I also am finishing up my doctoral degree. And some of you who know me well know that. And in these final few weeks of it, it's very, very demanding. And so I haven't had the opportunity to organize my speakers like I normally would. And I apologize to my audience for that. But with so much going on in the nation, I still feel like I cannot ignore what's going on. Um, Simply because my life is busy right now, as I finish up this doctoral degree. And I also just moved. So, life is lifing, as they say. So, but hopefully the next time I do a faith, family, and political affairs, we will be back to having our speakers. And you won't just be hearing, my opinion on things. But I want to thank you for tuning in again. And, as I always advise you, pay attention. And even though it's not as popular as it once was, the saying, stay woke, is still something that I believe in. As I always say, to me, staying woke just means paying attention, means being aware. And so I just ask you to please stay woke, pay attention to what's going on around you, and look out for your neighbors. Okay, thank you for tuning in to another edition of Faith, Family, and Political Affairs. We'll see you next time.